I'm here with Owen, and I'm just going to ask a couple of questions about how the compostable bags came about. So can you tell me what was the story of the first kind of, the idea of using a plant-based resin to make a bag?
The idea came out of Italy some 25 years ago, when chemists and people in Italy were looking at developing polymers or plastic type materials that would be made from renewable resources or starch. And in this case it was corn starch.
Right.
So at the time I was living and working in Europe, and when I came back to New Zealand we decided to bring back some of the technology and the polymers and the materials that we could work with, and try and take what was being made into a golf tee at the time into something flexible and packaging like this that we could use for packaging food.
Okay, yeah, right, a golf tee. It's an unusual vegetable because it was made out of wood. And how long did it take to kind of, over the years, to get to kind of this packaging now?
We started out making something similar to this, our green sack offering, which was a starch-based product, which was soft and pliable, stretchy, not very clear, and had almost no barrier properties. Right. So whilst it was good for containment and it had some strength, it had no use if you were packing dry tea.
So Owen, how long did it take to get to what is now one of your current designs, the resealable pack that we use for our tea?
This journey started 25 years ago. So back 1996 or thereabouts, we were making our first starch-based product, which was pliable and stretchy, had no oxygen barrier, no use for food, only a containment pack.
Sure.
From there, customers started asking whether we could do products for chocolate, other food products, and so we had to start developing a laminate of this material and then cellulose-based materials. So we would add cellulose materials to it and corn-based materials. We would build barrier films into the structure, and slowly but surely we would create a film that was suitable for packing chocolate or tea or other food items that needed to be kept dry. So this particular style of pack, the Econic, was primarily developed about 10 years ago.
Right.
Almost 10 years ago this year. So this is our anniversary. So it's been a long journey.
Yes, for sure. And can you kind of give us an idea of how long, kind of from start to finish, a bag such as this would take to produce? There's a lot of processes, obviously.
A bag like this takes a long time. One, because some of the primary raw materials that we have to make, that we have to get to make the products, come from all over the world. And some of those have very long lead dates. So you're purchasing some of the products for this that might be 20 weeks away.
Wow.
So because we're here in New Zealand, there's a shipping component of it, but even before that, the companies that make some of the componentry are only making it a few times a year. So we've got perhaps a 20-week lead date for some of the primaries. Once it gets to New Zealand, we have to extrude the films, then we print the films, we glue them together, we then pouch make them, and all of that process can take 3 or 4 weeks. There's a lot of time in the curing of the product so as to make it stable, so that it works for the long term, and it builds the oxygen barrier so we can have a high oxygen barrier material. So yes, anything from 4 to 6 weeks for manufacturing this, but in essence the journey started probably 25 weeks prior to that.
Amazing. Yeah, very valuable bag there. Have you found, like recently, the demand both in New Zealand and globally has increased in this kind of packaging requirement? People have been seeking you out for, a compostable package?
Since the world woke up to the fact that we've got microplastics in the ocean, people have started to be a lot more aware. So rather than just a few conscious consumers in the environmental space that love organic and such like, now the general populace are going, do we really want to put plastics in the ocean? What is the solution? What is alternatives to that, and how could that work? And what does that solution look like? How do we get this pack composted by nature so as to to not put microplastics
Yeah.
into the environment. And a big question from our customers is, are we sure that there's no microplastics going to be developed in the breakdown of this? And the reason we're sure is that the majority of this product is either wood fibre-based or starch-based, and that's effectively food for microbes. So we can be pretty much 100% sure that we're not going to be left with polyethylene particulates in the ocean in 100 years' time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Have you found like certain countries are kind of, there's more demand from certain countries than others, or is it just being kind of different pockets around the world? No one's standing out at the moment, like as far as your customer base, is it mainly New Zealand, I guess? But
primarily, New Zealand and Australia is our big customers currently. Australia seems to be quite innovative in embracing compostable packaging. It has done for a decade. New Zealand's been in pockets quite innovative. But over the last 4 or 5 years, it's just been a much more engaging conversation because people are prepared to listen, they're prepared to look for a solution, and they're prepared to pay significantly more because the primary raw materials for this is sometimes 4 or 5 times the cost of polyethylenes.
People are kind of looking at that true cost and that whole life cycle of a package. I think do personally.
Since Ellen MacArthur Foundation set up some years ago and identified the whole circular economy thing, that's created good dialogue.
I think so.
Because now we're talking about what is the end of life and where does the end of life go, and what are the processes for making that a resource that we look after.
Definitely.
And if it is going to be single use, then what can we do to make sure it's recycled by nature?
Yes, exactly. I think recently there's been a lot of kind of focus on consumers and you know, we are responsible for our own choice, obviously, when we, you know, have a couple of different products in front of us, but also, you know, there should be a bit more responsibility with the original suppliers, you know, and if that wasn't created in the first place, or they're making alternative options available for customers, then I think that's a better scenario.
A really interesting thing is in Europe years ago, they took the approach that producers of plastic packaging, for example, bottles, plastic, etc., were responsible for the end use of that. So there was a lot of movement towards companies being responsible, and we're only just starting to see that happen down.
That's good. That's good news. How about yourself? What have you been kind of doing of late, or something, like as far as, you know, reducing your plastic consumption, you know, at home or in your life, or something you'd like to offer advice from us?
It's real easy for me because I have chickens. So I can have all of this going into home compost.
Amazing.
If I can be looking at organic compostable packaging, it's a go home. It's not that easy for everybody.
No, for sure.
But there's a lot more infrastructure around now to actually begin taking organic waste and such like. So solutions are becoming available. Good.
And I wanted to point out as well, like, I guess the industrial versus home compost, there's a bit of, sometimes a little bit of confusion out there, I guess, when people see compostable, and they wonder, do they need the industrial conditions, like the increased heat and the intense environment to break things down, or can they break it down in their own compost and to, you know, often people are not quite sure what to believe, I guess.
Well, we could have had the option. We've taken the moral high ground. We believe that if there's not the infrastructure in industrial composting, then at least recycle by nature in the home composting environment is an important part. That means any consumer who buys this can cut it up into small bits and put it in their pot plant if they like. They can cut it up and put it in their veggie garden if they've got one. Or they can put it in their organic food waste collection if they want. So by taking the moral high ground, by making this a home compostable product as opposed to an industrially compostable, I think we meet the needs of literally
everyone. That's it. Eliminate the confusion and I don't know myself where I can, you know, do an industrial compost kind of scenario. So very good. Do you have any piece of advice for other kind of businesses that are maybe looking or entertaining the idea of going down this path with packaging? Just something, I guess, to encourage them that in the long term, in the short term it might be a bit more expensive, but in the long term you're probably going to be attracting customers.
Well, take the moral high ground.
Yeah,
at the end of the
that's
day,
it. Yeah.
There's solutions out there.
Yeah.
In most of the packaging applications you need to have a partially plant-based material and compostable, or take responsibility for the general fossil fuel-based product.
That's right.
And take it back.
Yeah.
Look after it and treat it as a resource, as the Econic Carpet Foundation says, and bring it back, treat it as a resource, recycle it, and then reuse it into an application.
Sure.
So some of the cool things we're doing is actually working with customers who perhaps can't package their product, to take those bags back, recycle them, put them back in there. And a really cool story is one for our fiberglass manufacturers for pink bags, where they make glass fiber for insulation in the bags surrounding the insulation. They go out to the environment, consumers use them, line their houses, insulate their houses, and those bags come back to us. We recycle them and they go back into a pink bags bag. So we've taken as much responsibility as we can, ownership of that resource.
That's right.
If you can't move to a compostable pack, then take responsibility for your packaging.
The next best thing, kind of. Yeah, wonderful. Did you always have kind of an environmental mindset, like back when you were?
No.
No? Like back when you were in Europe, I guess, and you came across this option, did it kind of
25 years ago, to be honest.
Speak to your environmental, I guess, values?
It spoke to somebody somewhere deep inside, because I've been raised and lived in New Zealand, where we have a beautiful environment.
Exactly,
But our track record in New Zealand of looking after it is not necessarily as good as it could be.
Yes.
But no, I've only just switched to electric vehicles. So that's a transition that should have happened a wee while ago. But you got to have options.
For sure.
And again, this is providing options for customers now.
That's right. Yeah. That's wonderful. Is there one thing that you enjoy eating or drinking that you find really hard to find out of plastic? Like when you want to try and source everything plastic free, but sometimes I give in and buy something in plastic because it's almost impossible to find out of plastic. Like ice cream sometimes, you don't know
There's so many things out there. You cannot get by. We're working really closely with a couple of a community group here at Raglan, which is on the Extreme Zero Waste community. And they are on a mission to eliminate one-use plastics from the environment. They're a coastal town, so they're a lovely community, and they've been on a mission for 18 years. So now we go through the supermarket together in there and we go, right, what's got to come out of here? And there's so many items that we're working towards changing for them, but we're getting a lot of resistance from the brand owners. But the one that comes to mind is drinks and juice. I've got a particular juice that comes in a Tetra Pak, and those things are just an environmental nightmare. But can't get the company to change.
No, that's it. It's kind of a fine line. Sometimes you think, oh, I really love this food, but you're torn because it doesn't come in the right the packaging that you'd prefer. Or
what that does here, it forces you to go out there and push harder to do better.
That's right.
Knowing that it's there, and you've actually thought about it to create the dialogue.
And I think a lot of people now, I know back home in Australia, like zero waste bloggers and things like that, they're encouraging people, if you do have that scenario come up and you do purchase something and you either are aware that it's in plastic or you purchase it and it's in cardboard and then there's plastic in it, when you get it at home and you think, drag. But they encourage people to write to those brands and tell them that they love their product, but they prefer an alternative packaging. And I think that's really important because it's so easy to do now. I mean, social media is so transparent, and I know that a lot of brands quickly reply to people on social media because they don't want negative feedback. So I think it's really good for people to just think that their voice is heard and that they don't feel they can't change or make a difference. And the more people do it, the better. A lot of people oh, I won't make a difference, but you do. A few
You
people
can make
do.
more difference today than ever,
Exactly.
ever in the history of mankind.
Yeah.
You've got communities that can span the globe in
Yeah,
a heartbeat. 2 clicks and
definitely.
you've got 100,000 people.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you better be authentic and,
Yes.
and honest in your offering.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's an honour to be here and
It's exciting.
meeting you all, and I really want to help spread the good word and spread the Econic kind of brand in Australia and get more people on board, and also show that there's easy options out there. It's great to hear as well if you don't have that luxury of putting things in home compostable packaging, you have options with recycling. It's just great, for more people to think about the life cycle of the product.
And going back to your question, what I do in spare time,
Yeah.
I just love to find those solutions to customers, because as soon as I think I might have mentioned, as soon as we made this in a black non-clear variety version, somebody wanted a clear version. So we spent hours, weeks thinking about how can we make it clear. As soon as we made it clear for dry goods, someone wanted it wet for chicken. It was like, how do we get the wet chicken back?
Yeah.
And that sort of thing is really quite inspirational when you get a team of people together and start solving problems.
I love that.
And you make a positive impact.
And I love that you don't say no. You just say we'll look into it.
Well, we ask the question, what would it take to make it clear? And people go, well, we can't. Well, what would it take?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and a lot of businesses wouldn't. They'd just say, no, it's too hard. Sorry. Yeah, but you're very good. It seems like you and your team are very good for problem solvers.
What's really good is we need clients like yourself. We need customers like you who take the moral high ground and say, I don't want to put my plastic in the ocean. How do I find a solution? Because it's not always that easy.
No.
Sometimes it's got a few challenges, and sometimes we make a few mistakes because we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
But it's companies that take the moral high ground like yourselves that need to change.
Yeah.
On the back of you doing this, other companies
Hopefully.
Well, if these guys can make that difference.
Yeah.
So it's a partnership.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a non-negotiable for me. Now that I've done it, I'll never go back to other packaging. And it's not, sorry.
Good attitude.
Thanks. And it's not just a marketing ploy or anything, it's really from my heart. Like, I'm so passionate about reducing plastic that it has to be that way. I can't do otherwise. So coming across yourselves was really exciting because, as I said, I looked around in Australia and there was nothing that to this standard. And I like to tell people, I think, well, I source my tea from Japan, I source my bags from New Zealand, and then I pack it here in Australia, so it's very multicultural. Thank you. Great. Well,
thank you.
Look forward to, checking out the factory and the lab, and thanks again.